Well, welcome to another session. Today I am going to talk about a subject or a topic that I believe will be quite important for the target audience, but also might be considered to be slightly sensitive or controversial for those who are not the target demographics. Let me begin by saying that I am aware that there are people who genuinely almost make it a duty to take offense, even when offense has not been given. I would like to begin today's session by emphasizing that no offense is intended in this message, so none should be taken, none should be received. And if you are my target demographics, if you are a young man, think about these recommendations as maybe guiding principles. If on the other hand you are a woman, a mother, rather than think of this as a personal attack on you, just imagine that this advice is being provided to perhaps your son, your brother, or someone you care about. Over the last few weeks, I have talked about the importance of staying focused on your dreams if you are a young man. One of the things I have opined on is the idea that in the modern West, presently today, there is no benefit to marriage to men. I have recommended particularly to two groups, what I call my undergraduate group, age 18 to 35, and the postgraduate group, 35 and above. I have recommended that you do not consider marriage because there is no benefit to you. If you choose to go ahead with marriage, it's important to then consider some of the things that I have talked about and I will share today before you make that decision. Specifically to the group who are aged between 18 and 35, I have recommended that 95% of your time during that period of your life should be focused on your dreams, your goals, your purpose, your aspirations, whether that be professional or personal, becoming the best version of yourself. And the whole idea is to draw forth from yourself that potential that lies deep within each and every one of us. Once you've turned 35, you are now a grown man, and this is when perhaps you can relax on some of these tenets and you can start to make different choices. So in today's session, I am going to speak to those two groups. I call the first group my undergraduate students. I call the second group my postgraduate students. For both groups, the same principle applies, that there is no benefit, or rather the same recommendation applies, that there is no benefit to marriage. Now, I have specifically said that if you're between 18 and 35, there are some specific tenets you must follow. One of which is that you should not get married or consider marriage until you've achieved your dreams. You should not consider marriage until age 30, and you should not get married until age 35. You should not have kids before age 35 preferably. You should not move in or live with a woman, a partner, a girlfriend, at least before age 30 and preferably before age 35. Now, in today's session, I'm going to go slightly deeper by giving you some additional insight or information. I have also said 95% of your time should be focused on your dreams, your goals, your purpose. That leaves you with 5% for women, or for the pursuit of whatever sexual goals that you might have. Now, this accounts for very little time. On a weekly basis, it's no more than 2.5 hours. to the first group, my undergraduate students, if you're dedicating only 5% of your time towards women, there has to be some rules. You can't just make yourself available to every single person. And so in today's session, I am going to talk about the importance of avoiding dating single mothers, particularly for those who are between 18 and 35. Now, along the way, I will talk about the group 35 and above. I will deal with that group slightly differently. The same principle applies. Those who are 35 and above, certainly, I would imagine at 35, let's say you've achieved your goals, you've achieved your dreams. Therefore, you can relax the 95% time split to enable you maybe focus on a different part of your personal development or your personal aspirations. Now, if there are rules that should be followed or should be considered, it's important to understand why these rules are there. Now, most people will cringe at the idea that I am recommending to you not to date single mothers if you're between 18 and 35. There is a reason. I am specifically looking out for the men. I'm looking out for your best interest, and I'm thinking about what outcomes are necessary in order for you to fulfill your dreams. Now, the first reason I would say avoid dating single mothers, and perhaps I should start by saying or defining the different types of single mothers. I'm not making a value judgment on single mothers. I'm not making a moral position on single mothers. I'm really taking an immoral position. But there are different types of single mothers. And let me explain very quickly, or let me outline the different types. The first will be what I call type 1. Now, I will leave at the bottom of this video a link to a detailed session I did where I explain the different types of single mothers. But type 1 applies to people who have been married and are widowed. They're now widows. In other words, they were married, they lost their husbands whilst married, and they had kids in that marriage or in that union. The second group are people who were married and are divorced. So these are divorcees. The third group are those who have had kids or has had a child outside of wedlock. In many ways, I call this type 3. In this case, we're talking about one person who's had one child or two or more children from the same man, but out of wedlock. And type 4 is those who have had kids out of wedlock, but have had kids to more than one person, so multiple fathers. Type 4. As you can imagine, all of those 4 groups are not the same. Different circumstances, different life experiences. But from the perspective of a young man between 18 and 35, I make no distinction because I'm looking out for what could potentially derail you from your dreams. And irrespective of what group they come under, the impact on your life as a young man is the same. Now, what I have not done is I haven't judged on their decision-making process. Now, let me go a step further and say, one of the reasons why, for a start, that you should avoid dating single mothers is because they have other priorities that in many ways are more important than yourself. I'll use myself as an example. In terms of my hierarchy of needs, judging from what is more important and down to what's less important, the way I look at things is, and I said this to the missus, my dreams and my goals and my purpose come first. Now, when I was 18, or when between 18 and 35, I made a priority in my life. My dreams, my goals, my purpose was first priority. I came second. I was a single man between 18 and 35. That hierarchy of priorities remained the same. My goals and my dreams and my purpose first. I come second. When I got into a union, I said to the missus, my dreams and my goals come first. I come second, you come third. Now, when I made a decision to take things more seriously, in other words, when I turned 35, there was a relaxation of that priority chronology, because by 30 I had achieved my dreams. I then decided that there would be other assignments, tasks that I would pursue, and therefore I could make a shift in priority where I came first and she came second. Now, I made it very clear that the hierarchy will remain the same if there is a purpose. The purpose comes first, I come second, she comes third, the kids will come fourth. That is the priority. Now let's extrapolate that explanation to a single mother. I would imagine most people who become mothers, especially over the last 25, 30 years, most people have become mothers out of wedlock, as compared to many who have actually become mothers within the union of a marriage. And therefore, once a child comes, the child becomes the priority, especially for mothers. The child becomes number one, she becomes number two, her dreams and goals become number three, and you, the man who is being introduced into the picture, you take the fourth position as priority. And personally, as someone advocating for men, young men, that is a position that is, I believe, is untenable. The fourth is not necessarily acceptable in my perspective. Now, interestingly, those who also have pets, if there is a pet in the family, you are relegated from fourth to fifth because the pet takes the fourth position. Now, this simply means is that your needs are not put first. And let me be very honest and say, rightly so, because in my case, everything else was made to be a secondary need compared to my primary need. So usually when you date a single mother, you have to fit in to whatever scheduling accommodations can be made, whether that be daycare, taking the kids out for special events, or looking after the kids. Effectively, you're squeezed into the schedule. Now, I'm going to say something as I go along which will contradict my recommendation, because perhaps I should do this now. Between 18 and 35, I am saying to you, the young man, 95% of your time should be focused, should be prioritized on you becoming your best self. 5% should be focused on women. Now, the contradiction is, if you can only dedicate 5% of your time to women, with single mothers are therefore the preferred group of women to date. The reason being, you can justify that by saying, well, she has other priorities, so she will not have time for me, therefore I can have my sexual needs met. Now, personally, I believe when it comes to ease of access, unfortunately, women who are single and who are single mothers generally are the easiest in terms of ease of access. Women who are 30 years and above come second, because there's that priority in making that decision quickly, because they realize that the clock is ticking and they've started to come to the end of their sexual prime. In any case, I do not believe that ease of access should be considered, primarily because the risk associated with dating a single mother far exceeds whatever the gain might be, in this case, ease of access. Now, the reason I say that is because I'm going to use an analogy for you. But before I use the analogy, let me say something which I believe to be true. All things considered, most people who get pregnant today tend to get pregnant outside the union of marriage, which is partly one of the reasons I say to young men that there is no benefit to marriage. All of the benefits that accrued to men prior to the 1960s, sex, a family, or having children, taking your last name, and all the other benefits, someone who could effectively be a nurturer, look after the kids, still provide you with the traditional roles that women played, all of that no longer applies, because you can also get all of that without signing the legal documentation or the legal contract with the state for marriage. Therefore, if you can get the benefits without signing the legal paperwork, then there is no benefit, because that paperwork you sign is a liability in itself. In any case, it's important to recognize that if most kids are born out of wedlock today in the West, most of those kids are born, or most of those kids, beautiful as they may be, loving as they may be, at the point when the decision was made, it was a poor decision, because in terms of the sequence of decisions that should have been made, it should have been marriage, children. It should not be the reverse. Most people today are making the decision to have a child for someone, giving them the highest honor a woman can give a man, although the man has not promised or committed or made a vow to be with a woman. Therefore, single mothers usually have made a mistake once. That mistake is in choosing perhaps what I consider to be a wrong spouse, or the choice of partner was wrong. Now, I bring in the exception here, which has to do with people who are widows. Now, I was raised in a Christian family, and raised under the precepts and the values of Christian traditional upbringing. And we are told to care for the widows and the orphans. Now, I recognize that they are an exception, so let's put them aside. But if you look through type 2, type 3, and type 4, in each of those scenarios, the woman chose the man that she procreated for. Effectively, she chose the man she had sex with. And irrespective of the conditions at the point of making that decision, the outcome has been a poor one, because the man who was supposed to be there is no longer there. From that perspective, it would imply that if a mistake has been made once, my recommendation to avoid single mothers comes on the back of the reality that if she's made a mistake once, she most likely will make a mistake the second time. Or if a mistake is made the second time, and let's just assume that you are such a great person, a great guy, she's more likely to make that mistake intentionally the second time, because she believes that you would be a great role model, a good father, to the child, or to the children that existed before you came into the union. That is one of the major reasons why I say avoid dating single mothers. The risk far exceeds the little benefit in relation to ease of access, in relation to freedom if you're dating a single mother. And what I'd like to do is expand on that slightly. One of the reasons I make a general recommendation to avoid marriage before 35, or avoid moving in with anyone before 30 or 35, to avoid having children before 35, to always use protection, irrespective of whether the woman is using some form of birth control or some form of protection. One of the reasons I recommend that you be careful is because primarily relationships are dream killers. Now, I can be more specific and say women are dream killers. Now, understand this. If I was speaking to women, I would say the same words. Relationships are dream killers for women, and men are dream killers for women, for the same reason that a man meets a woman and the woman automatically is expected to give up her dreams and effectively line up with a man's vision. That means her dreams are discarded. That's the killing of a dream. I am not speaking to women today in any case, so therefore I would stick to what I said initially, that relationships and women are dream killers. When you meet a single mother, there is an expectation that you have automatically, providing she likes you, providing the kids warm up to you, in any case, if the kids are too young, there is an expectation that you will give up your dream for the pure, simple reason that you automatically become a father figure in that relationship, bringing in stability, which the woman really needs and which the child really needs. If I have recommended that you do not have children before age 35 and you start dating a single mother, then you're ipso facto having a child, but there's a slight difference. Now you're taking on the liabilities of another man. Now think about it this way. Whoever the man was who fathered those kids, they decided that they would not give up their dreams. So they let go of what was rightfully their responsibilities and moved on in pursuit of what they believed to be their dreams. If you step in and fill those shoes, then by default what you are saying is that you're looking forward to taking on another man's mistakes. In other words, you're looking to raise another man's bastard. To put it very, very graphically, again, that is a 13th century French word that simply means someone who has been born outside of wedlock. So the second reason I'm suggesting you do not date single mothers, the first being that the priorities of a single mother are such that you actually come fourth or fifth in that relationship, which I don't believe is good enough. In every relationship, the man and his needs should be prioritized, which is the same reason I say to women, do not get married before age 27. Do not get married before you have achieved your dreams. The same scenario applies, irrespective of sex. The dates or the age for consideration of marriage or consideration of a relationship are slightly different for a man and a woman. The second reason that you should not date single mothers is because of the expectation that you will give up on your dreams. The third being that you now have to pick up where another man stopped. In other words, you pick up someone else's waste. Forgive me for saying this. I know the kids are great. I know the kids are from God. I know the kids are lovely, from the universe. Great. But you are picking up on someone else's mistakes. And you're paying for another person's errors, although you have not accrued the benefits. Now, one of the things I'm very, very aware of is the fact that we as individuals, we go through experiences in life. One of the benefits of deciding to get married is to experience something for the first time, which is used to be part of the honor of being a husband and being a father. Before the 1960s and the 1950s, you got yourself a virgin for a wife, so it was your first time and her first time. You became a first father, a father for the first time. She became a mother for the first time. All of those experiences was what united and kept the family together. A single mother, on the other hand, has had most of those experiences. So there is nothing new that you're gaining as the man who is now picking up on the responsibilities. In many ways, she's gone through the delivery of the child alone or with another man. She's gone through the 9 months process with another man or alone. She's gone through, in this case, I would say the trauma, the challenge, alone or with another man. So there's always some level of baggage, emotional baggage, a traumatic experience. If we go back to type 1, which are people who are widows, there's a trauma that goes with, a pain that goes with losing a loved one. So there is a lot of cleaning up you have to do as the person stepping in to fill those shoes. You have to ensure that the trauma has been allowed to be reviewed and to heal. And all of that is responsibility that you don't need between 18 and 35. There is also the baggage that comes, and this is perhaps item number 4, I should say, that comes with one of the reasons why you should not date a single mother is the baggage that comes from the fathers. In most of the cases, type 2, type 3, type 4, the father is still there in the picture. So you have to contend with whoever that man is. There's going to be interactions with him. There will be instructions from him. There will be clashes in opinions, especially as you're spending time around his son or his daughter. And you don't need all of that irritations, especially between 18 and 35. Now, the 4th or the 5th reason is that we've talked about the woman. Let's then talk about the child. Now, depending on what age that child is, seldom do those kids ever get to see you as father. You're always stepfather. You're always the second father. Now, from my experience, I believe fatherhood is a thankless job. Unfortunately, the way things are set up, we have to nurture a child till they're 18 before they become an adult. My experience has been that it usually takes until about 32, 33 for a man or for a woman to come into the awareness of the sacrifices made by their parents. Once you turn 18, there's a selfishness to you where you believe you have the world ahead of you and the world is your oyster. When you go into the world, you go into the world with excitement, enthusiasm, a sense of awe and a sense of adventure. It takes a while before you start to learn that life is slightly different to what you believed in your as a concept in your mind. As you approach 30, there's a humility that starts to come on you where you start to realize the sacrifices that were made just to have you as a child. So, in most cases, those who become stepfathers or who are dating single mothers with the intention of moving past dating and moving into relationships often are surprised to find that even after all the sacrifices that you've made, when the time comes in the future, you will never be their fathers. But from a young age, there is something that happens when a man who is an outsider comes into the life of a woman, who the young child sees that man as an outsider because he has a father. And in many ways, it's a protective nature of a young boy and even a young girl, where they do not commit to you emotionally until you've invested so much and so many years. Now, I hope you would have noticed that I started to shift in my focus from casually dating a single mother towards a relationship with a single mother. And this is where perhaps I should have indicated a pivot from my undergraduate students to the postgrad students. Now, let's say you've turned 35. You might be of the idea that you've met someone who is lovely, and you've met someone who you believe you are willing to pay that price to be with. Now, everything I've said in the last 5 minutes in relation to paying for someone else's mistakes, not being accepted as the father, the ingratitude that comes with that responsibility, the lack of gratefulness, and the ingratitude you experience, sometimes over an 18-year period and even more. All of that should be perhaps good enough as a deterrent to suggest to you to hesitate, to be cautious in quickly jumping in to a relationship with a single mother. Now, make no mistake, whether you are between 18 and 35, or whether you are 35 and above, the whole principle applies, because before you go to the point where you're ready to be in a serious relationship, you have to go through the stages of a relationship which I have shared in prior sessions: introduction, conversation, and interaction. You go through the process of dating, sex, and then you start the relationship. And then there is commitment, dedication, and then the union, whether that be in a civil partnership arrangement or cohabitation or marriage. You still have to go through the process. So even if you're 35 and above, it will be a fallacy to assume that because you've achieved your dreams, and in this case, let's say you have achieved your dreams, and now your dream is to have a family, it will be a fallacy for you to assume that because your dreams have been fulfilled, then it should be an easy process for you. I would say that's slightly wrong, because you still have to go through the stages of a relationship. Now, let's make no mistakes as I bring today's session to a close. Now, single mothers, if you're just looking for sex, like I said earlier on, in terms of ease of access, they are the easiest. The risk, in any case, far exceeds whatever slight benefits you might get. I will conclude by saying, irrespective of the person in question, if I was advocating for your dreams, which is what I am trying to do, my position would be that there is too much at stake and too much of a risk involved, and that you should instead reconsider and find opportunities in relationships that will not cause you to sacrifice your dreams, your goals, or cause you to take on a responsibility for which the benefits will not be accrued or have not accrued to you. Now, I hope that's been useful.